We are in a minority government, so we work with the Bloc, we work with the NDP, and sometimes we're able to work with the Conservatives too. We know that to do the right things for Canadians, we need their support, and that's what we will keep doing.
The Bloc says, though, that if you don't meet their demands, we're going to start working with the other opposition parties this week to start to bring down your government. Is that something that worries you?
Well, we're not focusing on threats. Canadians, I believe, don't like threats. They like our House of Commons to work for their benefit and forget about the bubble of Ottawa and the political game that some are trying to play.
That is Quebec Lieutenant Minister Jean-Yves Duclos today when asked about how negotiations are going with the Bloc Québécois after that party demanded the feds expand old-age security to seniors ages 65 to 74. Last week, most Liberals voted against a Bloc motion in support of that move. They said because it would set a bad precedent, and that led Bloc leader Yves-françois to say he's going to start talking to other parties about toppling the minority government as soon as this week. But when I spoke to NDP House Leader Peter Julian this weekend on Question Period, he said those talks haven't started yet.
No, I haven't. And as House leaders, we're reaching out to all of the parties every day. But I think there's a difference between what they might be saying publicly and what they're actually doing privately.
All right, let's bring in the front bench. With me this evening, former senior advisor to the Liberal Ontario governments of Dalton McGuinty and Kathleen Wynne, Dan Moulton. He's now a partner with Crestview Strategy. Shakir Chambers is a political commentator who worked in Prime Minister Stephen Harper's office before becoming a policy advisor to the International Trade Minister. George Sewell was the former director of communications for the federal NDP. He's now a principal at Syntax Strategies, right? Strategic, never mind. I can never get it straight. And Canadian press reporter Najud Amelise rounds us out. Hi, everybody. Very nice to see you. Dan, I'm going to start with you on this one. How seriously do you think the Liberals are taking all these timelines? How worried might they be about the Bloc saying, we're ready to go right now to talk to other parties, despite the fact that obviously everyone knows it's going to depend on the NDP, who can still support the government? Like, how worried are they about the fluidity, I guess I could say, of the situation?
Well, I think that quote that you played there from Peter Julian at the very end about the difference between how the different parties are behaving in public and in front of the cameras and how they're behaving behind the scenes is really important, because everybody's trying to look very strong when they're at a microphone, look like they've got the upper hand in the negotiation, or they're not going to be blinking first in that negotiation. All parties are trying to angle for that right now. What's happening behind the scenes, I think, is probably a bit different. And I think the Liberals are growing a little bit more worried about where things are heading in these conversations with other parties, simply because any additional uncertainty in the weeks ahead is unwelcome for the Liberals right now. I mean, it is, I don't think there are a lot of interests in seeing an election in either Liberal camps or certainly New Democrat camps or even really the Bloc's camp. But it is a very risky move or a very risky outcome, I should say, for the Liberals to see an election occur this fall. Based on public opinion polls, it would certainly be an extraordinarily difficult election for them. And so I think any additional uncertainty in the weeks ahead, any additional uncertainty from the Bloc is an unwelcome development, because relying on the New Democrats, I think, is troubling right now. I mean, we've seen polling that gives the New Democrats a bit of a glimmer of hope in the provinces outside of Quebec, and certainly to be confident in the ability of the New Democrats to hold their caucus together and have them vote together or ensure a sufficient number vote in support of the government just doesn't feel like a very secure environment for the Liberals to tolerate. And so, yeah, I think certainly Liberals are growing a little bit more anxious about the environment at Parliament right now. More dance partners is better, and so I think everything they can do to ensure that the Bloc continue to be open to supporting the government at a time of a confidence motion is really important.
Yeah, my understanding, George, is there are nerves around the NDP, and in particular around what caucus ends up doing. I think they feel like they can count on Jagmeet Singh to not want an election, but they're not so sure about the rest of caucus. Are those nerves warranted in your view?
Well, I think you should never take the NDP for granted. I think Stephen Harper learned that lesson to some extent. And certainly Paul Martin did, that, people thought Jack Layton was a cheap date in 2011, thought for sure we're going to lose everything. We weren't ready for an election, and yet we came out with 103 seats. So, yeah, and I think the caucus, it's hard to hold New Democrats together supporting a Liberal government in the first place, let alone an old one, let alone one that's kind of now being increasingly not following through on its promises. So I think there's a lot of commitment to try to do everything they can to make the Liberals pass pharmacare. But if that isn't happening, or if there's nothing else to hold it together, I think the Liberals would be wrong to take that vote for granted for sure.
And Jude, what's your sense on the Bloc stuff? Because you cover the fiscal situation for the federal government, you cover finances. If ministers have been talking out against it, it's primarily been on the cost and the impact on younger generations, which, by the way, politically, they've just spent the last 8 months expending all their capital on.
Yeah, I think the Bloc might have overplayed their hand in this situation, because you look at their demand, $3 billion, at least $3 billion a year in structural spending. That means every single year. And what are they offering in exchange? You know, their leader, Yves-françois suggested that, you know, maybe the Liberals can avoid an election before Christmas if they agree to their demands. And so if you're the Liberals and you look at the bank account, there's no money, and you look at, at what you have been prioritizing, which is young people, it's really hard to make a case in favor of increasing OAS in exchange for 6 weeks. So I think all parties right now are having to come to terms with the fact that we're in an unstable minority parliament, and an election might happen at any time. And I think the Liberals themselves are coming to terms with that as well.
It's crazy because, you know, a month and a half ago, Shakir, even when Jagmeet Singh ripped up that deal, I'm not sure we anticipated the degree to which it would inform every single day since, and the degree to which the possibility of an election has just dominated everything that happens on Parliament Hill. Like, there's a rare day where the focus is legislation or a policy priority. It's all about survival right now.
Yeah, I agree. But to what Dan said earlier, I actually wouldn't be as concerned about an election. I think Blanchet is serious about removing his support and being firm on his demands. I mean, if October 29th comes and goes and there's nothing on the table from the Liberals, he would look incredibly weak if he doesn't kind of force his hand and at least work with the Conservatives to try to get to an election. But I don't think the NDP are in any position to fight an election. Either A, because, you know, there are policy pieces they want to see, such as pharmacare, get passed. But B, it's just the serious reality. They don't have money, right? Their fundraising is not where it needs to be. And they don't have a lot of candidates nominated across the country. So if they want to fight a serious general election, they need much more time. So I think, listen, Blanchet's a serious guy. I think he will move forward if the Liberals don't do anything on his demands. But I suspect, regardless of Jagmeet Singh's strong words when he ripped up the agreement, he'll be there to prompt the Liberals, regardless of what the Bloc does.
Can I just get your quick response to that, in particular the money situation? It's part of what I put to Peter Julian over the weekend. That's the conventional wisdom, right? The NDP is not going to do anything because they don't have enough money to fight an election. What do you say to that? Well,
that's what's been said every single time before the NDP's voted to take down a government, consistently, whether that was 06, 08, 11, over and over again. And in fact, we're in a better position as far as I know. Usually, we end up in a situation where we have to borrow while still paying back debt. But the debt's been paid back. Money's being put in the bank. No, it's not anywhere close to what the Conservatives have, but you know, ever has it been such. So we're in a decent position, and don't underestimate the New Democrats' ability to say enough is enough. Let's go to an election.
Well, and Dan, what do you think about that?
Yeah, if I could, I would say, why isn't Jagmeet Singh seizing the moment like Blanchet is, right? Like there's a opportunity here for the New Democrats to issue the same kind of demands, to hold confidence in the way that he is, as a moment that they can extract political gains like the Bloc are. And I just don't understand why Jagmeet Singh isn't doing that. He's the one that chose to tear up the confidence agreement. He could have launched into the fall with an agenda, because as you point out, everyone in the country, particularly in the political media class, is seized with the question of, is this the do or die moment for the Liberals? Can they survive confidence this fall? It was a real opportunity for the New Democrats and for Jagmeet Singh to control the agenda in the way that the Bloc are, and they've kind of squandered that moment. And I think that Shakir's absolutely right. To me, all that says is their negotiating hand isn't very strong, and they're going to be the ones who end up supporting the government through the fall and avoid an election.
My sense is they might have more to say once the Bloc stuff plays out, but I will also say, I asked Peter Julian, what are you going to ask for? Is it electoral reform? Like, what is the big ask here? And he did say it was a good question, but he didn't answer it. So on that note, I will take a quick commercial break.